At no point have I ever blamed rugby. It's not rugby's problem, it's not rugby's fault. Rugby didn't create it. Rugby didn't put me in a position where I hurt my neck. It was an accident. End of. Honestly, like in the rugby world, to be honest, everyone just calls me Window. Even referees, guys at other clubs, everyone just calls me Window, which I'm comfortable with. Got no problem. If people call me Lee, I have no idea who they're talking to. Silhillians school, really. So I was 9 when I started, and I wasn't a model pupil by any sense. And I think I had a lot of excess energy and a lot of something that needed a direction to go in. And one of the teachers, Mr. Thomas, just assured my parents that they were going to cater for that sort of excess energy and get me into rugby. And I never really looked back. I hated it, I'll be honest, at first. I hated playing rugby because I'd come from a school where we didn't play rugby, and then I just didn't understand it. And then once I realised that it was just a form of controlled violence, I really enjoyed it. Shortly after, came up to the Sills, the rugby club, and just loved the life, loved everything about it.
We first met probably in a nightclub. I think my brother had riled him or something like that. So I was trying to peacemake, and we sort of got together. We started playing senior rugby at the same sort of time, which was 1999. Young, free, single, early 20s, and rugby became the sort of staple diet for us.
Friendship, camaraderie, just the lifestyle that goes with it. Knowing, there's always somebody there as well, so you could pretty much come here to the club any day, and there'll be somebody here, there'll be somebody to have a conversation with, somebody to have a beer with, and reminisce of old crazy stories about rugby tours. I just like the bonding. Like, I like the fact that other people have got your back on the pitch, you've got theirs, and being a team's just suits me as a person. I do remember my first team debut. It was when I was 18, and it was Creighton Phillips, Shag, as everyone called him, our old coach. He brought me on as a sub against Kings Norton away, and that was a baptism of fire. There was a very good team around that time. Guys had just come back from Twickenham. There was a big buzz about the club, and it was proper adult rugby, and it was carnage, and for whatever reason, I loved it.
I know you came down and watched us when we were at Twickenham. I remember the scallies of the Colts team climbing over the fences to try and get inside.
A Window was a forward, so a bit of back. The appreciation of a forward is sometimes limited, but he's always been a guy that would just always just give his all. He'd rile people, he'd wind people up all the time. He'd always back everybody up and always just kept moving forward.
Loved to carry, loved to get involved, wouldn't take a step backwards in anything, so loved a bit of niggle, bit of confrontation, which I quite liked seeing in a young player coming through.
Saw them all playing, the Jim Ropers, you name it, Alex Roper, and yeah, Lee was amongst them, although I have to say it wasn't a good fit for junior rugby, because I don't think he liked being told what to do.
So you could see the sort of nucleus of a leadership, or the germ probably of a leadership element in there, in terms of even as a younger player, he was still, quite vocal around the team.
So Lee really stepped up to the plate more than most. I think he really enjoyed that when you walked on that pitch, doesn't matter whether it's 17 or 47, you're equal. I mean, he really actually loved playing for the seniors. And of course, being the age that I was, I could, when we came back to the clubhouse, I could treat them for a few beers. But I think it's more than that. I think it was showing them rugby, really, the true club rugby.
Once you're here for a few years, and especially once you join as a senior, for me, going and playing for somebody else just was never an option. It just didn't. And we all had offers, we have all had offers and been approached, and people have said, "Oh, we'll give you a little bit of money here." It's not about that. It's just about your team, your badge, loyalty, yeah, it's just the way it is.
I was the chairman in his second and third year of captaincy, but Lee came in at a very important time for the club. We'd gone through a bit of a crisis of creeping professionalism. Players were getting paid or travelling expenses, and it ruined the ethos of the club. And we needed to go back to a core Silhillian, and that's exactly what Lee brought to us. Some of the teams we were playing might have their best 15 that they could afford on the pitch. We had the 15 best members, and that meant a lot to him, and he did turn the club around at a very dark time.
I think you could say that Window has a bit of a colourful past, and I think he's the first one to admit that. Always friendly, always wants to have a drink with you, have a chat, always very welcoming. But yeah, I'm sure he had a lot of fun in his youth, should we say.
Mischievous at times. Yeah, all rules apply, so obviously limited of what I can share with you, but fortunately it was Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday for rugby and afterwards for beers, so socially it was, if we weren't playing rugby we were meeting up and going out and having a good crack.
So 2015 I actually decided I was going to go and coach. So I actually went to Kings Norton for a little while and was going to apply my trade as a coach. Start there because I just couldn't do it here. I wanted to play at Sills and I had to sort of make a clean break. But that lasted no time at all because I went to Kings Norton and immediately signed myself as a player and ended up as a player coach, and then realised coaching I just couldn't do it. I had to play, and the biggest influence I could be was on the pitch. And then immediately re-signed to Sills for the next season, which in hindsight probably wasn't the best idea, but either way I actually had the best pre-season I've ever had. Finally took a pre-season seriously because I realised I was getting on a bit and promised myself it was my last year. Stopped smoking, which was a massive thing for me. Really, looked after my shape, got into amazing physical shape for me. My kids were born, so that was just ginormous for me because I think prior to that point I still didn't really know what to do with myself, like in a weird way. I knew I loved rugby, I knew I loved working in construction, which I was fortunate enough to have a decent job as a site manager, but it just didn't pay the wages really for me, and I knew I had to work harder, do more, push myself. So I worked really, really, really hard. I was doing Saturday mornings and then travelling to rugby and then coming back on the night and having the kids off Laura because obviously she's been up all week. So I have the kids on a Saturday night, I do the night feeds, I do the Sunday, and then back to work. And I was working, I was non-stop, but it was great because I turned around what was sort of not knowing where I was going, and almost overnight, within weeks, I'd turn my life around to, right, I know exactly how much money I've got, I know what I can spend, what I can do, what my priorities are, where we need a house, all this. And yeah, you can probably imagine it was a hectic lifestyle. Twins who didn't wake up at the same time when they need to sleep. So yeah, bit crazy, but it was good, really positive stuff. Everything was actually going really well. It was pretty good. Well, I pretty much remember all of it, which is a bit crazy. So, yeah, came on with about 20 minutes to go.
Well, I remember putting him on. That was my decision, which sort of led to sort of fairly sleepless nights afterwards.
I remember picking up the ball from the back of a ruck and doing what we called a black ball, which was you literally just pick it up and you dive around the side of the ruck. You might make a yard. You're looking to drag in some defenders and that's it really. I'd push the ball back between my legs. I was kind of in a crouched position. I was just sort of pushing myself up, and suddenly my weight totally shifted and my back of me came over the front of me basically. So I kind of did a gambol But in doing that gumball, whatever weight was on top of me, it pushed my neck under me. So I effectively dislocated my neck. I remember hearing a loud crack. I remember hearing a noise and just shouting stop very loudly. The referee stopped the game immediately, and I remember the physiotherapist running on and asking me various questions.
I was actually down at the far end of the pitch filling up water bottles when it happened, and I remember turning around and thinking, something's not right here. There's a player down. I didn't know it was him at the time, so came jogging up the pitch thinking, oh, it's just going to be an injury. But the way all the players moved off, you think, oh, this is something a bit more. It was right on the try line over my shoulder, and I came up to him, and the first words he actually said to me were, "Klutz, call my mum." And I said, don't be a silly, whatever, you're daft, you've just had a stinger or something. And he went, no, seriously, Klutz, call my mum.
I distinctly remember feeling, and this is going to sound weird, I'm feeling the paralysis sort of creep over my body. Really strange feeling. It was just like, someone just switched off. It moves through your body. So it moved from my toes, up my legs, moved up my hands, up towards where the damage was in my neck, and it's just like someone switching bits of your body off slowly. It's just a really strange feeling.
It was pandemonium in an organised way, but it was still felt like pandemonium. We'd got Yang, I think it was, the physio, with Luke, who took some great care of him. They then said, we'd obviously called paramedics at that point. They said, have you got a defibrillator? So I covered the length of the first team pitch faster than I think I've ever run it as a player to get it screaming into the clubhouse, give me the bloody defibrillator. Ran back out and obviously still no movement, still not good, but then noticed somebody else was there who I didn't know at all, which turned out to be Spencer Hartland.
Yes, I happen to be here. My son has been a member of Sills since the age of 6, and I indeed had helped with the coaching for many years up until the Colts era. It was a particular day at the end of Easter where many of the boys were coming back to play rugby, and my own son was playing in the second team on that day. He was on the pitch adjacent to the pitch where Lee was playing.
Just happened to break my neck while he was there, which was a real, I couldn't have asked for anyone better to be there, because he took charge of the whole situation.
When I first arrived at the situation, he was lying on his side, and so I was actually quite keen in the first instance to get Lee onto his back and apply some traction to his neck. In the position he was in, his neck was still flexed forward, and that may have meant he had continued pressure on his spinal cord. And so, with the assistance of his teammates, we rolled Lee onto his back, and I supervised the control of his neck and head. And then we applied some traction to his neck in order to try and take as much pressure off his spinal cord as possible. The position that Lee was in, and the fact that he reported immediately that he'd lost sensation in his arms and legs and had an electric shock type sensation through his body when the accident occurred, suggested it was a serious accident.
We put him onto the stretcher, wheeled him down the touchline, and then carried him in to the back of the ambulance. And I must admit, at that point I felt sick, because normally if a player's been injured, and I've seen a broken leg, a dislocated shoulder, something like that, then normally there's a bit of banter. They give you a thumbs up as they get in, and you take the mickey out of them and so forth. That wasn't happening.
By that time, though, I had contacted my colleague, who I knew to be on call at the Queen Elizabeth Hospital covering spines and spinal trauma, and alerted him to Lee's predicament, and he was very happy to take Lee directly to the Queen Elizabeth Hospital, which is a major trauma centre. Yeah,
he went off, and we were just, well, you feel very sort of caught out, empty. There's nothing you can do. We've done everything we can for him. We've put him into an ambulance, and now he's gone, and we really didn't know what was going to happen, and I don't think had any inkling of what his voyage for the next 2 weeks was going to be.
I was absolutely devastated. It was terrible, and I was 500 miles away. There was nothing I could do. The news was scant. We didn't hear what was going on. We didn't realise what turmoil there was at that afternoon, and what he had to go through.
But the last thing I remember was being in sort of A&E in like a side area, And I remember Laura being there, my mum being there, and I just remember saying to my mum, I'm really sorry. And then I just looked at Laura and said, have I wet myself? And she said, why? I said, because I can't feel if I have or haven't, and I don't want to have wet myself. And that was it. And then I woke up a couple of weeks later.
So I heard about it over a text message on the WhatsApp groups. Our Windows hurt his back. So my reaction was to post a picture of him on tour in a wheelchair. I said, oh, yeah, a bit like that one. And they were like, no, it's a serious injury.
I knew straight away. As soon as I felt it all, as soon as I realised I couldn't move anything, I had very, very, very vivid dreams while I was asleep. And I found out latterly that I could hear people. So I remember a friend of mine came onto the ward, sat down with me and had a conversation, was talking to me, and I didn't know until a good time after I'd got home that actually happened. And I remember her telling me, it's not your time, don't worry, because at that point I was very critically ill and it was touch and go whether I'd live or not.
He had a very torrid time. As soon as he arrived, he had a CT scan of his neck, which confirmed the fracture dislocation that had occurred in the upper part of his neck. He then had an MRI scan, which again confirmed more clearly the damage that had occurred and the pressure on Lee's spinal cord. And within a few hours of his arrival, he was taken to theatre and underwent an operation through the front of his neck, moving his windpipe to one side and the blood vessels to the other side, and he had a procedure to decompress his spinal cord and put some screws and plates in order to fix the fracture.
I was at the QE and I was actually in ICU for just over 3 months on ICU.
He had a combination of things: his inability to breathe, his heart not working, he developed a nasty chest infection which required protracted courses of antibiotics. So it was very much the care and skill of the nursing staff on the intensive care unit and the intensive care doctors that pulled Lee through that very difficult time.
All sorts went wrong with my body, just all sorts. It was a bit of a storm, really. For about a fortnight at least, they referred it to like a neuro storm sort of thing where your body's just trying to work out how to live. I couldn't talk, which was really upsetting because I was ventilated. Yeah, it was quite hard. It's hard, but at the same time I had to keep on top of it because I was aware that my body was trying to fight. Really aware of that. And all my dreams, it was very strange, all my dreams were about fighting something and getting back to my family. Every dream, and I can remember them like vividly, because you're in sort of a haze with all the drugs that are inside you, everything they're pumping into you. It's mind-boggling, really.
I visited first at the QE. I actually went in to see him. I was one of the first guys to go in and see him because the family had sort of asked me to be on point in terms of liaising with the rest of the club, and his mood actually there was quite buoyant, amazingly so. He was very keen to tell you the story, the things that had happened to him, his blood boiling, the fact that he died 4 times. And I think he still felt there was not a hope, but perhaps we weren't sure that the actual longevity, whether he was going to get anything back then.
I was very matter of fact about everything. I knew it had happened. I knew I was in a state. I didn't know what it meant at that point, but I knew it was never going to be the same. And from that point till a very long time, I just set about in my own mind organising everything, how it would be, what we'd do, how we'd all live together, how, to me I was just putting the jigsaw together in my mind, and that's kind of what I did at work. So it's the same sort of process at that point. It was just the way I coped, I think.
That's something that's really come through the whole process, the whole journey, if you like, is that there is an incredibly strong family in the rugby community. The outpourings of support that we had throughout Warwickshire when this happens were amazing.
The RFU were all over us, to be honest, the support they gave us, and jumped in and filled any void that we had.
Yeah, so the RFU Injured Players Foundation is a charity specifically set up to support people who have a catastrophic injury whilst playing rugby. We're there from the moment of injury and potentially for the rest of someone's life, with the aim of providing the support they need to live as independently as possible.
They intervene very quickly once there's been an accident. They step in and they take over everything for the family. You know, in terms of my family, so my kids and Laura, they were helping us out with the rent of our house, they were helping us with bills and all the stuff that you need just to carry on.
So it's all about working out what's needed the most. We've got fantastic medical care in this country and the rugby community can rally round and provide a lot of support. But really it's about looking at what's needed right there, right then, to take the worry away so that all the injured player and their family have to do is concentrate on getting well. So that could be as simple as paying for petrol so that people can visit them in hospital, making sure they've got their mobile phone with them. Later on it can be about covering rent or mortgage payments, but taking away that worry, providing that reassurance that rugby is going to be there for them no matter what it takes.
You know, I'd been on my back for months and then fair play to the guys in QE. I worked with some remarkable physiotherapists. And they were mobilising me, they got me on a tilt table so my body knew what to do when it was in an upright position again. If you've been lying down flat for God knows how long, your blood pressure when you're inclining will just drop completely. It literally took weeks and we were moving a few centimetres at a time to sit up. And then at the same time I'm learning to breathe again, which was by far the worst thing out of everything, was having the tube in my throat, in my neck. That was the worst thing out of everything. I got on really well with all the nurses and the doctors on ICU, and I just said, please don't put me on a ward because I don't feel I'm going to get the right level of care that I need. I think staying here is right. And they said, well, if you can, tick boxes for us with your progress, we'll keep you in here. So it was a nice challenge to be able to breathe for myself again, which they genuinely didn't think I'd be able to do ever again. Get my kidneys back working because they failed, which was ridiculous. Learn to eat again, which was so hard. After weeks of being fed through a tube and then actually being able to swallow and eat was ridiculous. Learning to speak again, that was really hard. But ticking all these boxes, and then I think the last one was closing the tracheostomy and being able to just use my own lungs, which was huge. And I did it, and I'd been told for weeks, if you can do that, you can go to Oswestry. The doctor that happened to be on the ward, it was his shift for that sort of week. He was a helimed doctor, and weirdly, one of our guys who used to play here was a helimed paramedic. He came over and he said, I've ordered the wrong ambulance. I said, what do you mean? He goes, well, it can't cater for you. I went, oh, okay. He goes, don't worry, there's a helicopter coming. I was like, really? He went, yeah. He said, they're going to come and collect you and take you to Oswestry. So, some of your old mates are on there. I was like, no way. So yeah, it was like, so I got a helicopter to Oswestry, and that was the start of rehab.
Going up to Oswestry, I think it dawned on him that this was now a long process. This wasn't just spend 3 weeks in intensive care. He was in Oswestry for a long stretch. But mood's still good. Good days, bad days. I'll never forget, there was a guy in the bed opposite him on the ward. I went up to see him with Gaz Taylor, our coach, who, interestingly enough, had brought a book with him for him to read, which I did say, how you going to turn the pages, Gaz, but he was mortified. Window thinks it's hilarious. And he said, the guy opposite, he's given up. And he basically said, he's going to die. He's given up. He's moaning and groaning all night long. Woe is me, this is the end. And he said, if I'm going to be like that guy, then I might as well give up now. And I think then he started to sort of reach deep inside to say, okay, I'm not going to give up. I'm going to do all that I can to get something back and to continue with my life.
It's a culture shock. So you go from the QE, which is like, for however many weeks, it was like living on a spaceship. You've got all these buttons, noises, bells, stuff, people, milling around, and everything's hustle bustle and it's fast and it's life or death, literally. And then you go to Oswestry and it's like going to live in a barn. It's a joyful place, but it's a very sad place at the same time, because people are taken a very long time to come to terms with what's happened to them. And there's only an amount of time you can be there. You can't be there forever. There has to be a process of moving on. The main thing they're looking out for is, are you able to articulate your care, what your needs are? Do you have a good understanding about how your body now works? They get you in a good position to send you home, so they do a lot of physio rehab with you, they do a lot of breathing exercises, they do a lot of occupational therapy type stuff, and they'll work on getting any kind of movement back or enhance any kind of movement. And then it's down to the basic stuff like, do you know how to have a wash? Do you know how to use a toilet? All of these kind of things that when you get there, you have no idea what's going to happen or how it's going to be managed.
We went over there to Oswald Street to see how he was. We went out, took him out to watch a local game of rugby, and we have got a great photo of us where we were watching the game and we've turned him around so he couldn't watch it. So the evil sort of banter was there, which obviously helps you get through these things.
I worked really hard. Like I was in the gym every day, even though I wasn't meant to be penciled in the gym, or I'd be down the occupational therapist just sitting talking with other people and having a good time, or I was in the woodwork shop trying to make mouth sticks with the chap there, you know, just doing stuff. They gave me a power chair similar to this one and that was it, didn't look back. I was out every day just going where I wanted to and doing what I wanted to and going off into town with Laura and the kids, and looking back on it now, it was a bit crazy to be honest, but good, in a good way, you know, a bit of freedom.
A remarkable individual. I have to say, going to see Lee 2 or 3 times a week on the intensive care, it was always inspirational to go and see him. He was immensely positive, incredibly brave about the condition which he found himself in.
And I remember thinking, how is he going to deal with this mentally? But wow, if anything, and I think he would say this again, his mindset and the impact this has actually had in his mindset has actually been quite a wonderful thing. He's just persevered through this and grown his mindset in quite amazing ways, and the way he talks about living in the present moment and you only get one life is really quite incredible.
You know, there was some anger and I was cross a bit, but my overriding thing was getting back to my family and getting back to my kids, and to some degree getting back here, which took me a while,
But he decided, I think, after a while he'd sorted his mental self out, his physical self wasn't really going to change, it had stabilised. And I think he thought, yeah, why shouldn't I go back to the place that I called home with all of my mates and re-engage with the rugby club and with rugby, but more importantly with the family of rugby.
I think what stopped me from coming down here was more me getting used to life, me getting used to the day-to-day again, me getting my own, like, forging a routine, because when you're paraplegic or tetraplegic or whatever, you have no option but to work to a routine every day, and you can't do anything spontaneous. Everything's got to be planned, so you know you've got the right kit, the right equipment, the right people on hand to help, this, that and the other. And I've got to be honest, the guys down here they've gone above and beyond really for me. They've looked after me, they've got me some really good kit and equipment, which has been great. They've gone out of their way to know how to look after me if there's a problem. So I feel sort of liberated and independent when I'm here, because I can just do what I want. And I know that someone on hand can help. Then the lads got to the final of the Midlands Cup, and that was it. There wasn't a choice but to come that day. And Jim Roper, my best mate, he said, listen, get your number ones on, get your jacket on. You are coming up to this. And that's that.
Must have been very tough the first time he came back here, mentally, to see where it had happened and not to be able to run out on the pitch. But he came into the changing room, talked to the guys, which I thought, again, fantastically brave thing for him to do. But that shows the sort of guy he is.
Yeah, sort of got wheeled in the change rooms to utter silence, which, I could have cried. I was just like, what? Just spoke to the lads, had a chat with them, thanked them for everything they've done for me, because they're all fundraised and done all sorts of stuff. And I just said, listen, you've got to go out and win it. And that's that. So last time I was here, we had a horrible day. And, we're not going to have that today. You've got to go out there and win it. And we did. Just a brilliant day all round. And from that point, haven't looked back. And then I think Jim convinced me to be on committee, and that was it. It's just a project then, and had to make it the best it can be.
did I get him involved? He wanted to get involved. He wanted to get involved in the club. He wanted to get involved in trying to make things and just try and contribute as best as he could.
I'd got a lot of time on my hands, and then I'm sure you know what it's like. A lot of time on your hands, your mind gets filled with too many thoughts, which you don't need. And actually, I'm sitting there thinking, I'm bored. They talked about chairman because I know Ian White was just done 10 years, and it's time for him to enjoy his grandchildren, and they kind of conned me into it.
Rugby was clearly a very big part of Lee's life. When I first met him in 2008, he was the captain and had been for a number of years. And rugby was a major part of his life. I think it had offered a great deal to Lee as an individual before his accident. And so from what I could see, even whilst he was in hospital, he had a great desire in order to give something back. And he certainly has done that in a very impressive way.
There's been a great committee that's always given us a great structure, but there was absolutely an opportunity for fresh ideas, and there was an appetite for people that have recently retired or not playing so much to really sort of contribute and get back involved.
The guy that actually suggested that he do this, that he stood as chairman, because I felt, you've got a lot of time on your hands, mate. You want to make a difference, and I actually think you'd be a bloody good chairman. And it's turned out throughout this terribly difficult couple of years we've had, I think we've done better than any other club around here. I think that's a genuine fact. You just look around the pitch, look around all the advertising hoardings that he's brought in during a pandemic, has been absolutely phenomenal.
I had asked him a couple of times, did he want to do it? And he felt he wasn't quite ready. Suddenly out of the blue, a couple of weeks before the AGM, he said, right, yeah, well, you're right, I should do it. And I thought, fantastic.
I think he's really been a fantastic addition to the committee. So coming from captain through then to chairman, he's putting himself down there as one of the real names that this rugby club will remember in times to come.
What I didn't know was what a great job and what a great vision he had for what he wanted to do with it. Because obviously assisted by Jim, they have got through an absolute amazing volume of work and preparation and defining the values of who we are, bringing the club together, one club, really making a very cohesive unit. So I think that they've done a fantastic job.
Have you got any other business, Karen?
No, I think I'm all right, thanks Lee, thank you.
Cool, nice one. Jimmy, who's next? Full on now, like every day we're busy. I'm busy, really busy. I wouldn't have it any other way, to be honest with you. I'm not sure what else I'd do. And I think, working for my club and being involved with the Injured Players Foundation, just really meaningful and purposeful sort of things to do. Saw the advert, wanted to give something back, and thought, why not?
Well, it's incredibly important for us to have beneficiaries on our board, because we can't make decisions about people without their input. And we need to be reminded every time we make any sort of decision with whether we spend our money, whether we save it, what projects we fund, we really need to be reminded of the value that this has or doesn't have for our beneficiaries. And where Lee's really been able to help is using his experience from his previous employment, and he's really been great with checking and challenging all of our policies, our documentation, our governance, and he really keeps us on our toes in that regard.
I hadn't appreciated just how sort of privileged that position is, and just how important it is to make sure that a charity's running correctly.
And ultimately, we'd love to put ourselves out of business. Typically, your average rugby club may only expect to experience an injury like this once every 500 years. They're that rare, but one is one too many. So we not only investigate each and every catastrophic injury that happens, but we work with universities to model how the human neck responds to the forces experienced within rugby. And if there are any factors, such as the type of tackle or the type of person, that might influence the outcome.
I feel very privileged to be part of it. Hadn't appreciated that's what they do, and now I do understand it. You realise the importance that someone in a wheelchair can offer, because it's a client's perspective, and that's what they really wanted on the trustees.
I can see him being here for a while longer, just enjoying the rugby, enjoying the fruits of the labour really, because that's what it's all about now. Yeah, there's been a lot of plans, a lot of new implementation, new documentation that's been created, but really it's about enjoying the rugby now.
the grassroots game, I think, is in a decent place. However, I suppose like everywhere, lockdown has really, it's given a few people a kick that they didn't need. People probably won't come back to rugby for various reasons, and that's quite sad. But I believe it will come back round again.
I really like working with Window. I think he's like Marmite, where you either love him or you hate him, but he gets a lot of stuff done. My first encounter with Window, so at the time we didn't have many girls at all playing, and we were probably close to folding, and he sort of asked what was wrong, and I went to town with lots of things, silly things like not having female kit that fitted properly. And within like a couple of weeks we had kit in the shop, so anything you want to happen, Window makes happen for you, which is just brilliant really.
The one big thing I get from Window when I talk to him about this club is that he's so passionate about the community and actually bringing the teams closer together and inclusivity, and I just think we're going to become a bigger community.
He's passionate about it, he's enthusiastic, and I think that rubs off on everyone else then, but he's just massively backed the girls. We've gone from limping through a season with about 8 players, now we've got over 30 registered seniors, and it's just amazing really, so we're just going from strength to strength with him.
There's an unfortunate drop off of kids between sort of 16 and 18. I understand why, life, university, further education, jobs, all those things, I get that, I understand that, but that's quite sad actually, especially for a place like this that's got such a successful mini and junior section, for not to see those guys playing one day in your first team shirt. To me, they're just part of the future, is how rugby should be going. We should have a thriving mini and juniors, men's, women's. That's the only way to grow as a community, to have everyone all together. If you've got passion, you've got heart, I think that's everything really at grassroots rugby. If you care about what you're doing, it rubs off on everyone around you.
His attitude is the thing that's inspired me. It's really helped me over the last few years. His bloody mindedness to just keep going, to just keep taking a forward step all the time is really incredibly inspiring.
He's more realistic now about where he is, in terms of if he ties one on or pushes it a bit too far, it wipes him out for 2 weeks. He's learnt to manage that now, that he has to make his health the top priority. And that's been an evolution. It's not been easy. He's a young guy.
Rugby for me is about playing. If I'm not playing, I'm incredibly frustrated. Watching rugby as a tetraplegic is the worst thing known to man. So I actually don't pay much attention during the matches because I just want to be in it.
But when I actually interviewed him on the radio show, I was struggling at that time myself and with my own mental health. And his interview was like, something clicked inside me, and I thought, live in the present moment, because that's all we can do. We can't worry about the past. We don't know what's going to happen tomorrow, so live now and appreciate what we've got. And that he really has helped me on my own journey. It's the highest numbers, most downloads, most reaction on social media. I would say it was actually my proudest show, because it really did help other people, and I know Window actually offered his support and help to people who reached out to me to say that they were going through similar things.
I mean, I'm not sure you can sum up someone like Lee, but what's been fantastic is just his sense of drive and his positivity. And I think that there's no challenge that gets put in front of him that he can't break down and just start to attack. And whether he attacks it a bit on one day or masses the next, it really doesn't matter, because for him it's always about that end goal, driving forward and making a difference almost each and every day.
I don't think I've ever been more content in my life, honestly. And I know people won't believe me, but I genuinely mean that. I think I've had this, okay, it's unfortunate, but it's a unique opportunity to stop and take stock of, see things for what they really are, and take stock of things around you, what matters and what doesn't matter. And actually, there's so much that doesn't really matter. It doesn't matter in life. What matters, honestly, I think, is your sanity, your happiness. That's a huge thing. And what really matters, just those close to you. People fuss and worry too much about materialistic stuff, what they should or shouldn't be doing, the next fad, what holiday they're going to go on, all these things, and they're killing themselves trying to get all those things. And actually, if you just stopped, go and sit out in the sun, don't have any kind of interruption of any description, or even on a cold day, who cares? Just go and sit there and just appreciate what's around you. And actually, that matters more than any of those things. So I'm quite pleased, I'm quite happy, because I don't feel stressed. I don't feel stressed with anything, because for me now it's living every day to the best it will be on that day, and just taking one day as it comes, because, you know, next week I might have a really rubbish day. But actually, I know for every really rubbish day, now I know I'll get 6 weeks of great days and I'll be fine, and I might have 2 days of just bleh. But I'll take that all day long, you know? Whereas before, every day there's a bit of stress somewhere, every day, and no, not anymore. It's great.
I've taken numerous people to see Window when he was in Oswestry, or when he was convalescing back at home. Everybody's terribly, terribly apprehensive the first time they went to see him. And as I said to my lads, I said, what you got to remember is from there up, he's still the same idiot he always was. From there down, yeah, that's changed. But this bit's still Window. And that to me says a lot about the man.
It's quite nice. And I genuinely know people won't believe that, but actually it gives you time, and I think time's so important in life now. I don't think I ever really understood how important time was until now. It's important, it's nice. Yeah.